corrupted delicate Matt George during that 3-minute commercial break.
Matt never answered if he knew what a lick was.
Yeah, nope, no clue. Is that like I've heard the term "get a lickin'," but I'm not going anywhere near that. I don't know if that's nope, no idea. There was another one too that you asked about. No clue, nothing.
I think we were asking about lean. If you knew what lean, Matt, and it's all started. Poor Matt George. He was just drinking a Sprite.
I just wanted. LeBron endorses them.
He just wanted to just quench his thirst with the Sprite, and the conversation shifted to lean, purple drink, and get a lick in, and it's gotten a little dicey here. We're just educating our dear friend Matt George here on.
Somebody in here that was pretty funny. Hit a licking.
That's all right. That's all right. That's part of Matt being with us. Is we're gonna introduce Matt to some things he's not familiar with. He's gonna talk Kings with us, and we're gonna introduce him into some things here on Twitch.
Talking Kings, that's for sure.
Indeed.
There's another one at the top of the show too that I'd forgotten that. No, I had not heard of it either. You said it right at the top of the show. You said it should have been the poll today if I knew what something was. A term was. No, it wasn't just lick. There's another one too. I can't remember what it was. Maybe it'll jog my memory as we're talking, but I didn't know. No clue. Nothing.
We'll get you, man. That's what we're here for. It's for the culture.
Some things are beyond saving. They're just beyond saving. You know, you just let me do my thing, have my Lord of the Rings, drink my Sprite, and just have a good time.
And what I love, and I think I'm just noticing this. Do you have LED lights around that Lord of the Rings photo?
Hell yeah, I do. Hell yeah, I do. Are you tired of one stagnant color? I can make it all sorts of rainbow for you.
No, I'm a fan of the LED lights. I like it. That's good stuff there. So you got the app controlled LED lights around the Lord of. I like it.
Oh yeah,
that's good stuff, Matt. I'm with it. Matt George, of course, the host of the Locked On Kings podcast, over 1 million downloads, and now he's approaching 1,000 subscribers over there on YouTube. If you don't subscribe yet to the Locked On Kings podcast over on YouTube, go do that now. Help my man get to 1,000. It'll be big for him. Kings sitting here at 1-2, Matt. It's the most positive thing that you've seen so far through 3 games.
Davion Mitchell. Without hesitation, Davion Mitchell. He is as advertised, continues to be as advertised defensively, and then he gives you a 22-point performance against Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors. Steps up offensively when you really, really needed it, because everybody other than Harrison Barnes didn't know how to score, I guess, or just forgot how to score against a team that is not necessarily known for lockdown defense, even if Draymond Green wants to tout himself as a Hall of Fame defender and one of the greatest defenders of all time. But Davion, I mean, the strip of Donovan Mitchell, he got cooked a couple times by Steph Curry. There's one play in particular where Steph didn't run off a screen, so Davion actually got a chance to guard him a little bit, and Steph crossed him and got to the lane for a layup. It was like the third quarter or something like that. Steph got him a couple times, but Steph also had a couple of his patented deep, exciting step back threes that the crowd loves because you always think it's going in, but sometimes Steph has to take those because he has no other option, and Davion gave him no other option with some of those step back threes that he ended up missing. So Davion has just been fantastic. He's been exciting. I'm not here to overreact after 3 games and say Davion needs to be a starter or that he's in the Rookie of the Year conversation. I'm not going that far on anything, but I haven't seen anything from Davion Mitchell that I've gone, that concerns me, or that's not at the NBA level.
Davion has been such a joy to watch on the defensive end. And one of the interesting subplots and things that's coming about so far after 3 games is that Luke Walton can't take him off the floor. You know what I mean? Like, he is so good with what he's doing on the defensive end. He's making such an impact on that end that Luke has found he's had to choose between Buddy, Terrence, and even Tyrese Halliburton in some situations. Do you see that continuing where he's just going to have Davion Mitchell on the floor moving forward in these crunch time moments?
Well, if he continues to outplay both De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Halliburton and Terrence Davis and Buddy Hield, absolutely, that's going to continue to happen. He has outplayed all 4 of those guards. He has been argue. Actually, I don't even think it's an argument at this point. Through 3 games, I'm not saying overall, but through 3 games, Davion Mitchell has been the most reliable guard on this Kings team, the second most reliable player, period, to only Harrison Barnes. Davion Mitchell has delivered in every single game. Now, you could look at offensively 2 out of the first 3 games and go, well, he only had like 3 points this night or 2 points this night and 4 points the other night. I get that. And offensively, you'd like a little bit more out of Davion, but in both those games, he was still impactful defensively. So it wasn't like he disappeared. If you're looking at the box score and just judging based off the box score, you're completely missing the context of what he provided in both those games. And then he comes out against the Golden State Warriors and drops 22 points. And what frustrated me the most about that is maybe eventually, could be by the end of the season, could be 2-3 years into his career, 22 points could become somewhat of a regular occurrence for Davion Mitchell. At this point in his career, this early in his career, 22 points is probably his peak, if not right next to his peak. And the fact that he had a peak offensive performance off the bench for your team and you lost that game is probably the most frustrating thing, because you need to take advantage of performances like that. And it's just a shame that Fox, Halliburton to some extent, he had a better offensive performance, but still wasn't aggressive enough looking for his shot, which has been probably the biggest criticism of Tyrese Halliburton's game to this point throughout his career, is his lack of aggression. De'Aaron not stepping up, and then Buddy Hield not scoring a point until the 4th quarter. Like Terrence Davis not being good as well. It's just wasted. It's completely wasted. And when you're a team like the Sacramento Kings, if you're getting that kind of performance out of your backup point guard who is still providing solid defensive work, you need to win those games.
You mentioned Tyrese not being aggressive enough, and that being a knock, so to speak, a knock on his game, through the first year of his career. What's the problem right now? Because it feels like something isn't clicking with Tyrese right now.
I think Tyrese's main issue is also De'Aaron's main issue. And I think they don't necessarily look super comfortable with each other yet. And it's not just, that would concern me a little bit if it was just Fox and Halliburton, but it's whatever third guard you plug in there, whether it's Terrence. Buddy is arguably the one they're most comfortable with, because we saw that lineup in significant stretches, especially to close games last season, even if it wasn't as effective as they wanted it to be. But I see De'Aaron and I see Tyrese, and I see them thinking more than reacting. And I think that's I see that more, honestly, with De'Aaron more than I see it with Tyrese Halliburton. And Tyrese, you look at his stat line, near triple-double, the first of his career, but it's one of those triple-doubles where it would have been a squeaker, right? Maybe like a 10-10-10 or a 10-11-10.
Jason Kidd joints.
Yeah, and a triple-double is a triple-double. I'm not trying to take that away from him, but it was one of those unimpressive stat lines where it's like, wow, he's on triple-double watch, and I still don't feel like he's been super impactful, or I still need more out of the guy. I just look at Tyrese Halliburton, who is a brilliant player, high basketball IQ. You want him thinking, but it still looks like he's thinking too much and not playing as much. And he's not the only one I could say that about.
And to your point also, Matt, is the aggressiveness. Tyrese Halliburton, 3 of 9 in that game. I need Tyrese as my starting off guard or combo guard. I want to see him be aggressive on the offensive end. Should be about 12 shots a night, 12, 13, 14 shots a night, because he has that capability to score at a higher level than what he's shown. And when he's aggressive, it also opens up so many other things for the guys that he is trying to get the ball to, whether it's Richaun Holmes on a roll, give him a oop off the pick and roll situation, or hitting somebody in the corner like we've seen him do a couple times. I think when he understands that his aggressiveness with his shot will open up the lanes that he can use to get the ball out to others, that's when it's going to start really picking up. His production with this team is going to really start picking up.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. There's one possession from the Warriors game in my mind that just speaks to the biggest gap in Tyrese's game and maybe his mindset in my mind. If you remember back to the start of last season, really quickly, Tyrese cemented himself as someone who needs to be on the floor in the 4th quarter, because his shooting percentage from beyond the arc in the fourth quarter was really, really good. He was not backing down from those shots, and he got the confidence by hitting a couple of those big ones against I think the Denver Nuggets game in Sacramento that the Kings won during that 2-1 or 3 or 2-2. I can't remember the start with 3-1. Yeah, 3-1 because they beat Phoenix once too. Hitting that big three, you could see that gave him the confidence to continue to shoot that for the next couple of weeks. There was a possession where half-court offense for the Kings has been absolutely abysmal, but they finally got a breakdown with someone attacking the basket. I think it was Davion Mitchell. There's a kick out to Tyrese Halliburton, who has more than enough space on the wing to get a three up, and instead he decides to make the extra pass to, I think it was Harrison Barnes or Terrence Davis in the corner, and I don't remember if they missed the shot or they ended up passing out of that shot, but it's moments like that. I get the swing play could be the right play if you're having an aggressive closeout, but the closeout wasn't that aggressive. You had more than enough time to put that shot up. Tyrese, you're expected to be the second best player on this team. Put that freaking shot up. And if you miss it, okay, it was a good shot that you rimmed out. I have more than enough confidence in Tyrese Halliburton to take those shots and make those shots, whether it's a big moment or a routine moment like this one happened to be. So that's a perfect example right there of like, it might have been, it's a smart play. What he did to continue to swing the ball to the corner, it's a smart basketball play. It just wasn't necessary there when you're more than capable of hitting that shot yourself.
If he was Draymond Green, he would say it's the smartest dumb play in NBA history.
Yeah.
That's what he would say.
That's his
you mentioned how I think the word you used was abysmal. The half court offense is. Offense wasn't supposed to be a problem for the Kings.
Yep.
What's wrong?
Yeah, so I asked Luke Walton about this after the game. Actually, my initial question to Luke Walton was about the start to the fourth quarter when the Kings were outscored 17-13 by a lineup that didn't feature Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and for the most part didn't feature Andrew Wiggins, which is absolutely inexcusable, especially when De'Aaron Fox was on the floor for the majority of that time. Like that right there is a short-term version of the Kings playing the Lakers one night with LeBron James and taking them to the wire and losing. Hey, maybe like they did against the Utah Jazz. And then the next night, Oklahoma City Thunder come in and you lose to them by 15. Like that was a small version of that game that we've seen a million times during this playoff drought. It's a persistent problem with this Kings team that for some reason they cannot outperform lineups and they are way better than. And it just, and no disrespect to the Golden State Warriors, their depth is better than what I expected. It dawned on me after the game, looking at a box score, that I watched a full 48 minutes of a Golden State Warriors game and didn't realize Otto Porter Jr. was on that team. Like I'd completely forgotten that he was on that team, even though he played 10, 15 plus minutes in that game. So initially I asked Walton about that, and I didn't get more than 6 words out before Walton cut me off and immediately started saying, yeah, that can't happen, which I actually appreciated. I'm glad he took initiative there. Didn't need to hear the rest of the question to know, yeah, that can't happen. So I followed it up with the fact that the Kings have been outscored by 30 points, 94-64 in the fourth quarter in these 3 games combined, which absolutely can't happen. And what it is it reminds me of the breakout season under Dave Yeager a couple of years ago, right? Where the Kings got off to a great start because they were getting out in transition. They were running teams out of the gym, tiring teams out. But as soon as teams made an adjustment towards the midway point of the season, towards the end of the season, they forced the Kings into the half court. The Kings had no answer, and they missed the playoffs. It's the exact same problem here. The Kings are using their defense in the first half to get out in transition. It's what made them so effective against the Utah Jazz. Adjustments are made. Those mistakes aren't going to be made by good teams in the fourth quarter. Less turnovers are going to happen. So the Kings are going to get more half-court offensive sets. And it's a team that just doesn't look like they know what to do. It's like, okay, we're going to run a high pick and roll here, and hopefully you can get to the basket and draw on the defense and kick out for an open 3. But if that doesn't work, recycle it and do it again. Like that's all it looks like. The half-court offense really just looks like a pick and roll or a pick and pop, and that's as far as it goes, which is really like ground level for the NBA and very beatable for the NBA by teams like the Golden State Warriors, who know how to switch and adjust and go over a screen or go under a screen, depending upon who the ball handler is. So it seems very, very simple. And that's concerning because, like you said, D'Lo, That's supposed to be the primary strength of this Kings team. We've heard time and time again by Fox, by different players, by Luke Walton. Hey, we're not worried about the offense. We know that we can score on a nightly basis. It's defense, defense, defense. And you absolutely needed to correct and focus on the defense. And to their credit, the defense has been significantly better. The numbers don't necessarily reflect that, but eye test says this defense is a lot better than it was last season.
Well, it's because they've had like half the game has been really good.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
Then the other half has just been, oh, there they are.
Because teams know, and they've played 3 good teams. Portland, they've played 2.5 good teams to start the season, and every single game has, for the most part, been the same. First 2 quarters, really, really good. Third quarter, not nearly as bad as last season, but you can feel the shift. Fourth quarter, we don't know how to play basketball anymore. That's 3 straight games, 3 different opponents, 3 same stories.
And I'll say this about the offense, especially late in games. And I talked about this yesterday, talking about it last 2 days. That's where you need your guys to bring you home. That's where you need your guy, your franchise, the straw that stirs the string, straw that stirs the drink, De'Aaron Fox, to bring you home. And he hasn't been able to do that, particularly in the last 2 fourth quarters. And even the one in Portland wasn't great, but the last 2 fourth quarters, he just hasn't been able to do it. And I think the offensive woes, because a lot of the times in the fourth quarter is, I feel, it's not necessarily about the offense that you're running. That's when, if you have guys that can put games away, that's when they shine. You know what I mean? Because teams are locked in on what you've been doing all game on a defensive. There's only so many plays you can run in a game. Like they've seen them enough at that point. They know what type of action that you have. Now your guys, your main guys, have to make shots to put games away and take you over the hump. And maybe it's looking at it too simplistically, but the Kings' main guys haven't been able to bring them home. De'Aaron Fox, Tyrese Halliburton. You can look at Buddy as one of their main offensive guys. And even Harrison Barnes, as good as he's been outside of the Portland game, for whatever reason, I think part of the reason is they're not looking for him enough in the fourth quarter, but he hasn't been particularly great in the fourth quarter of these games. So you need your guys to bring you home once you get into those crunch time situations.
Kenny, I don't think you're simplifying it at all. In fact, I think you're pointing out how simple it should be and how the Kings are complicating things. Like, we came into the season knowing the Kings were rarely, if ever, going to win games on the back of their defense. We were all hoping that the defense would just be good enough or standard or average or mediocre enough to put them in positions to win games with their offense in the fourth quarter. And in all 3 of these games, the Kings have been in a position to win in the fourth quarter, and they won only one of them. And arguably they were lucky to win that game based off of how terrible the Kings were in the fourth quarter and how the guys didn't show up. You're 100% right. I was actually listening to the open of your guys' show yesterday. And Kenny, you were talking about how De'Aaron Fox has dropped the ball, how it is on him. And I've seen over the last 24 hours or so, a ton of just ridiculous overreactions when it comes to De'Aaron Fox. Oh, he can't be the guy anymore. Oh, he's terrible. He needs to be traded for Ben Simmons. Or this is actually Davion Mitchell's team. Like, every fan base is going to do that. I get it. But 3 bad games doesn't erase the whole last season where De'Aaron cemented himself as the best player on this team, as a star in this league. And had he been on a halfway decent team last year, De'Aaron would have been an all-star, no doubts in my mind. And we're still hoping for that this year. So that isn't erased by 3 bad games. But 100% to your point, your defense has done well enough to give you a lead or only down by 2 heading into the fourth quarter against the Golden State Warriors team who had the cojones to have Steph sit on the bench for 6 to 7 minutes, and you didn't punish them. You had a lead against the Utah Jazz team, who was the best team regular season in the West last year, and you were the better team for that majority of that game. Your defense put you in a position just to close that out. You didn't show up. 100% that is on De'Aaron Fox when he scores only 12 and 17 points. How many times have we talked about De'Aaron's own words, on nights that I'm not great, I have to be good? And 2 out of 3 games, De'Aaron has been fine, and it's no surprise that in the games that Fox has just been fine to bad, the Kings lose. Doesn't matter how good Harrison Barnes is, doesn't matter how good Davion Mitchell is, Tyrese Halliburton, does not matter. If De'Aaron Fox is just fine 99% of the time, the Kings are going to lose that basketball game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He had some Matt George, the host of the Locked On Kings podcast, with us here on D'Lo and Casey on ESPN 1320. If you're watching on youtube.com/ESPN 1320, make sure you head over to the Locked On Kings podcast channel on YouTube. Become a subscriber. That's only 18 away from that 1,000 subscriber marker, and that's a big deal. You guys helped us get to 1,000 subscribers. Let's help Matt George get to 1,000 subscribers as well. We saw De'Aaron make some unforced errors, if you will, in the fourth quarter as well. Is that do you think that's him, being aware of, hey, I got to take this game over? Like, we saw him get really aggressive in the Warriors game, getting to the basket, and it was effective there for a little bit. And then I think the lanes kind of closed in on him, and that's where some of those unforced errors started coming into play, including that one where he just kind of shot the ball into the sky. He just kind of flung the ball in the air. Like, is that De'Aaron being aware of, okay, I've got to take this game over, or is it just forcing the issue, or is it just bad basketball or bad play here and there?
I think it's a combination of all three, but I think it falls into what I said earlier. It looks like he's thinking more than he's reacting. And there was a moment in this game where Fox gets it wasn't even a rebound. Fox just gets the ball and bounded to him immediately off of a made Warriors bucket. And in 4 seconds, he has a layup on the other end. And everyone's like, there he is. There's De'Aaron Fox. Like, that's the guy that we know that's super speedy. And I actually I haven't heard too many people talk about this, but I've talked about it a few times on the pod. Like, De'Aaron has definitely bulked up. He's definitely bigger. And I'm not here for, the pounds of muscle that De'Aaron's put on has slowed him down. Like, I'm not here for that, because he's shown that he's still just as speedy. But the start of the last two of these games and watching them in person, this has really stood out to me. Like, especially the start against Mike Conley. Fox was trying to play bully ball a little bit. Like, he was trying to use his size, use his new strength that he has, and get into the paint. And he even had a couple like post up looks that didn't end up resulting in points. And that's not De'Aaron's game. Like, I get he has the strength and the size to do that now, but that strength and size should be a benefit for you being able to finish through traffic at the rim, not suddenly want to play down there with the big boys. Like, De'Aaron's game is getting downhill and getting to the rim. And even though offensively he didn't have a good game against the Golden State Warriors, to your point, D'Lo, there were stretches where he was drawing in the defense just because he's De'Aaron freaking Fox and he has that reputation at this point, and he was making the right passes, and a lot of those shots just weren't dropping. So I had a couple more shots go in. De'Aaron's stat line looks significantly better, and I think his impact is significantly better on this game. And also, not to make excuses for the guy, but Luke Walton pointed out after the game, and he's absolutely right. De'Aaron Fox only getting to the line one time in a game is absolutely inexcusable. Like, I try to avoid bagging on officials, and officiating so far in all three of these games has been questionable on both sides, not just for the Sacramento Kings or against the Sacramento Kings. But Fox playing the way he does, getting to the line only one time, which I don't think he got to the line less than 2 times at any point last season. Like, that's ridiculous. And Fox said it himself that he and the team, I think it was after the Portland win, they don't expect to get calls. Like, they play in practice and don't call fouls in practice because they expect that to be the game expectation. So I don't want them using that as an excuse by any means. And I don't think Walton was in pointing that out. He said it himself that Fox needs to be better. And I guarantee you, look, as much as we're frustrated with De'Aaron Fox not being good enough, Fox is more frustrated with himself, and Fox puts it more on himself than any of us possibly could. So there's nothing that we could say to fire him up that he hasn't already said to himself, or the people that are around him haven't already said to him. And that's what makes him so good. So I expect Fox to come out of this and be just fine, and for people to calm down a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Fox has shown on a number of different occasions that that's the level of expectations that he sets for himself, coming out and executing it. That's what we want to see. And he's, like I told Damian, what happens and what has typically happened with De'Aaron Fox for the majority of his career is he'll have lulls like this, whether it's at the start of the season or in the middle of the season, where he's not hitting his shots. He's not, I don't know if looking engaged is the right word, but he just looks a little off. Like it's just not going for him. And it'll be about 4, 5, 6 games where he's just off, and then he'll snap out of that and he'll start scoring 25, 26 a night, and everything will be fine. What I've said for him is I believe that he's the type of player where he doesn't have to have those lulls. He can be a guy that once again on his worst game is giving you 22, 23 points. And that's what I would want to see him eliminate from his game, is these moments when, if he's not getting to the line or the jumper isn't falling, that he just kind of looks lost out there and isn't able to contribute on the offensive end as far as scoring. I want to see him eliminate those things. I think he has the capability of doing that.
Yeah, I'm looking at his numbers right now on Basketball Reference, his game log last season. He had 11 games last season where he scored less than 20 points. And then the rest the majority of the games were mid-20s to even some 30s and 40s games in there. So yeah. I understand what you're saying completely. Guys, I'm actually, and I want to get your thoughts on this because I'm really two-faced on this. I hear Luke Walton when he says after the game, like, we're making these self-inflicted mistakes, and it's good because we know we can correct those, and we're still in the game even though we're making these self-inflicted mistakes. And I hear the argument of De'Aaron Fox has had 2 bad games offensively back-to-back, but the Kings are still in a position to win those games. And I'm like, actually, you know what? You're right. That's great. That's awesome. If it was 2 freaking seasons ago. The other side of me is like, I'm not here for that anymore. I'm not here to listen to any of that anymore, because if you are in those games, then win those games. And it's a very simple way, because especially when you're going into opponents that are better than you in the Golden State Warriors and the Utah Jazz, it's easier, much easier said than done. But if you're doing enough outside of what is supposed to be your bread and butter to win these games, then you need to win these games right now. Casey, you said this at the start of yesterday's show. I'm not here to wait for 20 games into the season to go, okay, now we really got to start. Like we had a filling out period to start the season, and now we're going to kick it into gear. No, you can't do that. You know why? Because as Tristan Thompson pointed out, all the good teams in the NBA do that. This is when you need to jump on them right now. And the Utah Jazz, Golden State Warriors, both very beatable at home. You did enough outside of your best players and your strength to win, and you still lost. So I'm very two-faced on that, because it's like I hear what they're saying and I recognize what they're saying is like it is a positive that the Kings can correct those mistakes and more than likely win these games, but it's a negative that we're still using that. Like, I'm not about moral victories anymore.
Yeah. I don't think it's a moral victory as much as it is like, and Kenny and I think we talked about what you just mentioned, but in a slightly different fashion, more in the sense of, okay, you had an opportunity to beat both Utah and Golden State with De'Aaron not playing particularly well. Those are the games that you really have to take advantage of, especially if you believe those games where De'Aaron isn't playing particularly well are few and far between. Mm-hmm. So if you can steal one when he's bad or steal one when he's not as good, think about how you're going to look when you're winning the games where De'Aaron is doing what he's supposed to be doing, or at least what we think he's supposed to be doing, and that's dropping 27 and 8 or something along those lines. So I understand the messaging behind it, less of a moral victory and more of a, hey, capitalize, like you had an opportunity. And in that point, I think any game that De'Aaron Fox isn't playing well, and you can even look to a couple of your starters and go, yeah, these guys aren't playing particularly well. Any game in that sense that you're winning, you're stealing. Especially if it's against a good team. Maybe you're not stealing one against the Houston Rockets. Maybe you're not stealing one against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Golden State Warriors and Utah Jazz, yeah, you definitely are.
But on the flip side of that, what about those nights that are going to happen at some point this season where De'Aaron Fox is playing at a 30 or 40-point clip and you're not getting enough out of everybody else because teams know, okay, we just can't let others beat us. Like Harrison Barnes has been playing out of his mind. I don't think you can expect 20 plus points per game. Maybe you can.
Shoot, I can.
I'd love it. But there are going to be nights where Harrison Barnes disappears a little bit because that's just happened.
Don't agree.
Okay, never mind. Harrison Barnes is going to average 30 and De'Aaron Fox needs to average 20 for this team to win 70 games.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
I like it.
No, I hear you. I get your point. Yo, you want to be a winning team or not?
Yeah.
Like those KC, those are you can't have that. Can't happen anymore. You can't have it's just De'Aaron, let's shut it. Harrison, like, fam, like, no, that can't be the case. Harrison's got to go out there and be like, okay, they're devoting all they're trying to shut us down and let De'Aaron cook. That's fine, fellas. Let's work around this. Let's find some ways to get more involved.
Yeah.
Speaking of HB, I'm sorry, Casey. I know if you want to get a question or want to talk, I'm just taking over your show. I'm the new Casey now.
You're fine, man. You're good.
D'Lo, you responded to a tweet of mine that I tweeted out during the Utah Jazz game because I was working with the Utah Jazz radio broadcast team.
Traitor.
Yeah,
Wow.
I know
Yeah,
exactly.
no, it's fine. You know,
Getting all the
we knew,
secrets.
yeah,
It was actually really.
it's fine.
I am
It's
the
fine,
third
Matt.
man. It was extremely satisfying actually to listen to that broadcast and for them to intro the game as if like, oh, the Utah Jazz are actually playing a real basketball team tonight because they opened their season against the Oklahoma City Thunder. But it's the Sacramento Kings who they beat by 50 points at one point last season. So the Jazz are probably going to be 2-0 to start the season. And then it transitioned into, holy crap, the Utah Jazz are getting beat down and the Kings are giving them everything that they can handle here. This is actually not good. It was a fun transition. But at the midway point of this game, or at one point in this game, Harrison Barnes is off to another great start. And David Locke, who's the play-by-play broadcaster for the Utah Jazz, he starts talking about how he believes Harrison Barnes is the missing piece on a championship team. And he thinks Harrison Barnes is going to have a ton of trade value at the trade deadline. And like, if we thought it was a lot last season, he thinks it's going to be crazy this season. And I was sitting there kind of smiling because the Kings side of me goes, yeah, he is going to have a ton of value and the Kings are going to hold on to him because they're going to be in the race at that point. And why the hell would they give up on him? But for the most part, to me, it was vindication for what Harrison Barnes has done here in Sacramento, how he has carved out a role for himself and is now excelling at that role to the point where he went from the Kings being a laughingstock for the contract that they gave him. I remember the Kings and Vlade getting ripped to shreds, even by Kings fans here in Sacramento. You gave Harrison Barnes how much money? And now it's like, man, what a bargain. This guy's the missing piece on a championship team. I thought it was just vindication for Barnes's evolution as a Sacramento King.
Yeah, man. Harrison Barnes. Now, earlier in the show, I don't know if you're listening, Matt, I talked about Buddy Hield's next contract.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
3 years from now. All right. Talked about that. We've talked about a number of different times Harrison Barnes' next contract. And I don't feel bad about that at all.
No.
I would finish this.
That's a next year. That's a legitimate next year conversation.
I want to see Harrison Barnes here with this. We were talking about this last year during the trade deadline when people were like, yo, you might want to move him. We're like, move him? We want to extend his contract. Mm-hmm. What are you talking about? So to hear other people talk about that, it makes me chuckle when they're like, yeah, he's a great trade asset. Like, no, like we're trying to win here. We're trying to be successful, and we want to keep all the successful guys here. And I know he's been around for a long time, but he comes off as somebody that's 35 years old. No, he's not even 30 yet. So Harrison Barnes, playing the way he has played to start the season, a great sign to see. And I think it continues. I think Harrison is around his prime right now. I think he's in store for a huge season coming up.
I 100% agree. Harrison Barnes has been above and beyond. I think, D'Lo, you said this yesterday. He's been the best player on the Sacramento Kings. It's not close. He is easily the most reliable player on the Sacramento Kings. It's not close. Talked about this on the podcast too. Like I think we jumped the gun a little bit on Tyrese Halliburton, and no disrespect to Tyrese, because I do still think he's a phenomenal player and he can be very, very good. Casey, I think you were talking about comparing him to like CJ McCollum and whether or not he's going to live up to that. Like I'm here for those conversations. Absolutely. But he's not the second best player on this Kings team yet. I mean, it's Harrison Barnes without a doubt. And arguably, like we just said, Harrison is the best one. I know what I'm going to get out of Harrison on a nightly basis, even on the nights where the shot isn't falling and Harrison only gives you 12, 13, 14 points. He's still impactful in other ways. He's never been a guy for like fantasy basketball lovers who want to draft him and put him in their lineup because he doesn't put up a bunch of numbers outside of scoring really. But all reliable on a nightly basis at a wing position, which by the way, you're really weak on right now. You have no depth other than Harrison Barnes and Mo Harkless. And historically, the Sacramento Kings have had a terrible time with that wing position. So the idea of getting rid of Harrison Barnes is absolutely asinine. Even if the Kings were completely out of it this season and everything had completely fallen apart, I'm pretty confident in saying it's not Harrison Barnes' fault that this team had fallen apart. So why in the world, unless you're getting some, I absolutely can't refuse it package, which you're not going to get. Harrison Barnes isn't going anywhere.
Harrison Barnes is averaging 20 this year, dude.
Okay, I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
That'd be huge.
I'm going 20 and 8 at minimum.
What did he do last year? Was it 16 or 18?
I feel like it was in between, wasn't it? Wasn't it 17? Matt George, statistician here.
Let's look it up. Last
I don't know. It's not for the Jazz. It's just for old D'Lo and KC, but that's fine.
Last season, 16 points on 16 points on 49% shooting, and he's at 28 points on 50% shooting right now. He's shooting 56% from 3-point range.
Most improved, MVP. He's running the table with postseason awards this
Coach
year.
Of the year. Give him
Let's
Coach
go,
of the year.
HB. Let's go.
You know, it's gonna be one of those years. Like, yeah, Harrison Barnes finally reaches his potential after being the #1 high school player in the country.
Okay, that's fine, but let's not talk like Harrison Barnes has been trash all these years.
No, but #1 player in the country. This is the year he gives us what everybody thought. Going to North Carolina, being this transcendent guy. 28 points a night for Harrison. You heard it here first.
Well, he's also playing in what I think is the role correct to him in the NBA. And now Harrison and I have a bond that I will never let go of. And that's the fact that his daughter was born on the same day as my son, August 25th. So I found that out after the game too. So now I'm forever a Harrison Barnes stan for that reason alone.
Nice.
Well, that's cute. We've got about 2 minutes or so. How do the Kings beat the Suns tomorrow night?
I think it's a consistent 48 minutes or as close to it as you possibly can. I think you do the same thing as you've been doing in these 3 games, which is put yourself in a position to win defensively in the fourth quarter, and then De'Aaron, Tyrese, step the hell up. Like it's sounds simple, like Casey said, because it is simple. Defense needs to be good enough to be in the position, and then the big guys go get it done.